The Arab billionaire spoke in Arabic, and only the young black waitress answered him, bringing the entire room to a stunned silence. In the presidential conference room of the Westwood Hotel, the air was so tense you could almost taste it. A $5 billion real estate deal teetered on the brink of collapse. A long, white-clothed table was covered in folders and legal documents. On one side sat James Wilson, the powerful CEO of Pinnacle Investments, one of America's top real estate firms, his fists clenched beneath the table. Across from him was Sheikh Khalid Al Hassan, head of the Abu Dhabi National Investment Fund, his face ice, cold but resolute. This wasn't just any contract. It was a gargantuan $5 billion agreement poised to transform 5 Manhattan neighborhoods into a groundbreaking model of sustainable, modern development. Wilson had spent 3 months meticulously preparing, pouring millions into lawyers and interpreters, but now he could feel failure closing in. Sheikh Khalid, a decisive voice in the project, sat upright. After listening to Wilson's reasonable profit, sharing proposal in flawless Oxford English, the sheikh suddenly switched to rapid, fire Arabic. The room jolted. Paul Evans and Martin Harris, the 2 professional interpreters Wilson had flown in, exchanged panicked looks. Despite years of diplomatic experience translating high-level U.S. Middle East talks, they were completely out of their depth. Beads of sweat dotted their brows as they strained to catch the financial jargon and cultural nuances in the sheikh's sharp tone. But it was hopeless. Wilson felt his world unravel. He'd weathered tougher storms in his career, but never such helplessness. A heavy, awkward silence fell, broken only by urgent Arabic whispers between Sheikh Khalid and his advisors. "Paul, Martin, what's he saying? We need to know." Wilson barked, leaning forward. Paul wiped his brow, voice trembling. "Sir, he's using a lot of Gulf, specific financial and governance terms. We can't keep up." Martin added, equally defeated. "He's disputing Section 4.3 of the contract, but we can't pinpoint exactly what his objections are." Anger and despair welled up in Wilson. He'd spent 6 figures on these 2 experts to prevent exactly this kind of miscommunication. Yet, here they were, the weakest link in a $5 billion chain. He glanced at his assistant, Richard Turner, pleading for a way out. Turner simply shrugged, eyes downcast. Meanwhile, Sheikh Khalid's tone rose, his hand slamming the table, the echo reverberating off the walls. Some of his advisors nodded emphatically, their impatience mounting. Neither side had the slightest clue how to move forward. Wilson knew that if he didn't act fast, the sheikh would stand, walk out, and take that $5 billion opportunity with him. He inhaled deeply, steeling himself, when, from the corner of the room, someone moved. Jasmine Bennett, a young black waitress in her crisp Westwood Hotel uniform, quietly refilled the guests' coffee cups. For 3 days she'd observed the negotiations in silence, overhearing every detail. Yet nobody had even noticed her. To them, Jasmine was invisible, just part of the room service. They couldn't have been more wrong. As the sheikh continued his tirade in his native tongue, Jasmine's eyes brightened with confidence. She knew exactly why the deal was faltering. And though she understood the risk she was taking, her sense of dignity and justice compelled her to act. Setting the coffee pot down softly, she stepped out of the shadows, stood tall, and drew a steady breath. In perfect, flawless Arabic, she spoke, "Your Highness Sheikh Khalid, if I may, I believe I know where this misunderstanding comes from." Instantly, the room went dead silent. Every eye, Wilson's incredulous gaze, Turner's astonished stare, even the sheikh's surprised lift of an eyebrow, fell on the petite black woman standing before them. The fate of Pinnacle Investments, that $5 billion agreement and Wilson's own reputation, now hung on her words. Never before had the Westwood Hotel's presidential suite felt so suffocating and so full of possibility. When the fluent Arabic words rang out from the corner of the luxurious boardroom, every eye in the Westwood Hotel's presidential suite swung toward Jasmine Bennett, the young black woman who had just spoken up so unexpectedly. Yet, just moments before, she had been utterly invisible to them, no more than a meaningless ornament. She stood there, petite, dressed in her crisp black and white server's uniform, each fold of fabric meticulously pressed each morning before she left her modest, run-down apartment in East New York. Her face was composed and confident, but her heart raced with anxiety. She knew perfectly well that by doing this, she'd thrust herself into the spotlight, something she'd spent years avoiding. Jasmine's gaze settled on Richard Turner, the executive vice president of Pinnacle Investments, the one person in the room she'd come to know more intimately over the past few days than anyone else. Turner was always impeccably tailored in his expensive suit, his hair slicked back to perfection, his eyes cold and calculating. But those eyes had never once looked at her with respect, not even when she'd placed a steaming cup of coffee in front of him. He never once met her glance. For 3 days, Jasmine had quietly fulfilled her role as coffee server in this opulent suite, bearing witness to the most critical negotiation in Pinnacle Investments' history. Each morning, the moment she entered, Turner would be the first to scowl and issue a disdainful reminder in a tone dripping with contempt. "Miss Bennett, move quickly and stay out of sight. I don't want our international clients thinking we employ unprofessional help in this boardroom." His words cut like an invisible slap, but Jasmine had only nodded politely and murmured, "Yes, sir." She understood that Turner's demand that she remain unseen had nothing to do with professionalism. He objected because she was a black woman standing among powerful white men. Every time Jasmine approached him, Turner would edge his chair slightly away, his eyes flashing suspicion and annoyance, as if she threatened his social standing. Each time, Jasmine's heart would squeeze in her chest, yet she pressed her lips together and quietly completed her task before slipping back into a corner where no one paid attention. Few in that room knew that the young black woman carrying coffee had graduated with a master's degree in international finance from New York University with top honors, and had spent 2 years analyzing complex global financial structures for the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, ADIA, the very kinds of structures under discussion here. Before the 2008 financial crisis, Jasmine's life had held great promise. Her father, Joseph Bennett, a brilliant engineer at one of New York's leading construction firms, had built a stable life for their family. But the crisis shattered everything. His company collapsed, their home was foreclosed, and not long after, her father died of a stroke while Jasmine was still in Abu Dhabi. His death forced her back to the U.S., cutting short her career to care for her ailing mother and younger sister. Back in New York, Jasmine faced a brutal reality. No one wanted to hire a black woman, no matter her qualifications. She sent hundreds of job applications to banks, investment funds, and financial firms of every size, only to be met with polite rejections or skeptical glances that judged her by her skin and her background. In desperation, she took a job as a server at the Westwood Hotel, far below her skill level, but it paid the bills and allowed her to pursue a PhD in international finance at Columbia University. What Jasmine never expected was that this humble job would bring her closer to the $5 billion real estate negotiation, where her true expertise would be the crucial factor. Back in the present, the presidential suite fell utterly silent after Jasmine spoke. Turner's face twisted with disbelief and anger as he sprang to his feet. "Miss Bennet, what do you think you're doing? This is no time for games. Leave this room at once and get back to serving coffee." His words were a knife's edge. Yet Jasmine stood tall, chin raised, meeting his gaze without a tremor. "Mr. Turner, I'm not joking. I understand this negotiation, and I understand exactly why Sheikh Khalid is dissatisfied. I only want to help." Turner scoffed, a sneer of condescension on his lips. "Help? You're just a coffee server. What could you possibly know about a $5 billion deal? Either you're arrogantly deluded, or you've lost your mind." Wilson, still stunned, held up a hand to restrain Turner, his eyes fixed on Jasmine, a mixture of curiosity and skepticism in his gaze. "Wait, Richard. Let her speak." Wilson's interjection made Turner hesitate, though his contemptuous glare remained. Jasmine drew a steadying breath, determined to prove she was no longer invisible. She knew in that moment that her fight against prejudice had truly begun, and that this was the moment that could change everything. The atmosphere in the Westwood Hotel's presidential suite grew even tenser after Jasmine's unexpected declaration. She stood there, steady as a rock, amid the storm, sweeping through this $5 billion negotiation, her sharp yet calm eyes scanning the faces still reeling from what they'd just heard. Across the table, Sheikh Khalid Al-Hassan, the hard-faced Arab billionaire, leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting instantly from irritation to marked curiosity. He signaled his advisors to fall silent and waited for Jasmine to elaborate. But over on the Pinnacle side, the reaction was entirely different. Richard Turner, Pinnacle's executive vice president, looked as though he couldn't believe his ears. His eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in skepticism and anger. Turner's colleagues, interpreters Paul Evans and Martin Harris, exchanged astonished glances, as if they'd just witnessed the impossible. A black waitress, fluent in Arabic. This defied both their expectations and the biases they'd carried all their lives. "What? Did you just say?" Turner hissed through clenched teeth, his voice laced with contempt and fury, as if her mere words had grievously insulted his swollen ego. Jasmine remained unflinching. She repeated herself, this time more slowly and clearly in precise, easily understood English so everyone could follow. "I said that Sheikh Khalid's dissatisfaction stems from a critical mistranslation of Section 4.3. Your interpreters rendered voting preference rights into Arabic as absolute voting control, which wrongly implies that Pinnacle intends to seize full decision, making authority if performance milestones aren't met." Turner froze. Jasmine's confident correction struck at his deep-seated arrogance and prejudice. Yet instead of admitting the truth, he tried to dismiss her expertise, his tone growing even sharper. "And how would you, a mere black waitress, understand such complex terminology? Are you trying to outsmart us with half-learned knowledge from a few books?" A few Pinnacle team members snickered mockingly, their glances silently endorsing Turner. How could a young black server outshine the professional translators they'd paid hundreds of thousands to hire? But James Wilson, neutral until now, studied Jasmine thoughtfully, his gaze appraising. In that brief moment, he recognized something extraordinary in this petite woman that he'd never considered before. Jasmine met Wilson's eyes and spoke softly but firmly. "Mr. Wilson, I hold a master's in international finance from New York University and worked 2 years at the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. I'm intimately familiar with the region's financial culture and terminology. This mistranslation has led Sheikh Khalid to believe Pinnacle seeks to monopolize control, undermining the trust essential for a partnership." Her words plunged the room into stunned silence. no one dared speak, not even Turner, who stood frozen, cheeks flushed with both anger and shame. Sheikh Khalid, who had listened quietly until now, spoke at last in his deep, measured voice. "Ms. Bennett is correct. That error has sown our doubts about Pinnacle Investments' true intentions." Then he turned to Jasmine with newfound respect. "I am impressed by your skill and expertise, Miss Bennett. How is it that someone of your qualifications is here serving coffee at this meeting?" For a moment Jasmine hesitated, then offered a polite, composed smile. "After the financial crisis, my family fell on hard times. My father passed away suddenly, and I returned from Abu Dhabi to care for my ill mother and younger sister. To support them and continue my doctoral studies at Columbia, I took this job, Your Highness." Her simple explanation filled the room with a different kind of silence, one of awe and respect from Sheikh Khalid, a flicker of embarrassment from Wilson, and stunned discomfort from Turner and the Pinnacle team. Finally, Wilson broke the silence, his voice tinged with genuine respect. "Your Highness, with your permission, I propose Ms. Bennett join our negotiation team to help clarify these misunderstandings." Sheikh Khalid nodded approvingly. "I fully agree. This is the first step toward restoring mutual trust." In that moment, Jasmine felt the shift in the room. She had stepped out of the shadows of invisibility, not by anyone's benevolence, but through the true competence she'd quietly honed through hardship. Yet she knew this was only the beginning. The real battle to dismantle prejudice and earn recognition still lay ahead. The moment Sheikh Khalid looked at Jasmine with respectful eyes, everyone in the Westwood Hotel's presidential suite seemed to recognize the seismic shift that had just occurred. Yet Jasmine knew this was only the beginning of a much longer, tougher battle. The battle against the deep, seated prejudices held by those seated around that powerful table. Sheikh Khalid sat up straight, watching Jasmine with bright, genuinely curious eyes. He gave a slight nod and in a warm, clear tone of English asked, "Ms. Bennett, you have made a strong impression on me. Could you tell me more about your background and qualifications?" His question was like a wide, open door, inviting Jasmine to step forward and assert her worth. She understood that this was not only an opportunity, but also a responsibility. The responsibility to shatter the unfair biases that had weighed down people like her for so long. Jasmine offered a gentle smile and a modest nod, then responded in a calm, measured voice filled with confidence. "I hold a master's degree in international finance from New York University, with a thesis on sustainable investment structures for Gulf sovereign wealth funds. After graduating, I spent 2 years at the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, where I analyzed and helped build financial models for major projects across the Middle East." Once again, the room fell completely silent. Jasmine's simple but clear introduction left the entire Pinnacle team astonished. Paul Evans and Martin Harris exchanged perplexed looks. Only now did they understand how she had so easily spotted the critical mistake they had overlooked. James Wilson raised an eyebrow, a look of surprised admiration flickering across his face. Yet among the astonished and respectful expressions, Richard Turner remained a clear exception. Arms crossed, his narrow eyes clouded with doubt and discomfort, he smirked sarcastically as Jasmine finished her introduction. "Oh, that's quite impressive," Turner scoffed. "But forgive me if I remain skeptical. Miss Bennett, how does someone with your credentials end up serving coffee in this hotel?" Turner's words landed like a cruel blow, intended to unsettle Jasmine and undermine her confidence. A few members of the Pinnacle team averted their eyes, clearly uncomfortable with his question, yet no one spoke up to defend her. Jasmine took a deep breath, keeping her gaze steady even as her heart pounded. She understood Turner's intention. He wanted her to lose her composure, to appear weak or uncertain, proving that she didn't belong here. "My father passed away suddenly," Jasmine replied evenly, her voice unwavering. "My family faced severe hardship, and my mother fell gravely ill. In that situation, I needed flexible work hours so I could care for both her and my sister. The position here at the Westwood Hotel allowed me to continue my doctoral studies in international finance at Columbia while earning enough to support my family." Turner grunted dismissively, his eyes still full of suspicion and contempt. He made it clear he had no intention of letting go of his prejudice. How touching. But let me be frank. How much can we really trust your expertise, Miss Bennett? All you've done is catch a translation error, a minor slip. Do you truly have the knowledge and professional depth to contribute to the complex discussions we need, far beyond a few simple terms? Wilson shot Turner a look of unmistakable irritation, but before he could speak, Sheikh Khalid raised a hand to halt him. The Sheikh fixed Turner with a cool, clear gaze. "Mr. Turner, I don't believe that's the respect due to someone who just helped salvage this critical negotiation. I have faith in Miss Bennett's professional abilities. At the very least, her catching this serious translation error surpasses the work of your expensive professional interpreters." Sheikh Khalid's cutting words drained the color from Turner's face. He ground his teeth, fists clenching. Jasmine quietly appreciated the Sheikh's defense, but she knew she couldn't always rely on others to shield her. Stepping forward, she faced Turner directly, her eyes resolute and unwavering. "Mr. Turner, I understand why you're doubtful, but I believe a person's value shouldn't be judged by their current job or their skin color. I'm not here to beg for your trust. I only ask that you judge me by my abilities, not by the unwarranted stereotypes you impose." Silence enveloped the room once more. Turner was speechless, anger and shame flickering across his face. Sheikh Khalid nodded in approval, and Wilson stood, speaking slowly and decisively. "I think we've wasted too much time on baseless debates. If Sheikh Khalid agrees, let's restart our discussion on the disputed terms, and this time, I'd like Miss Bennett to join us directly to clarify each sticking point." As Wilson finished, Jasmine felt the palpable shift in the room. This was truly her first challenge, the fight against prejudice that she would have to overcome to earn the recognition she deserved. The air in the Westwood Hotel's presidential suite grew ever more oppressive, as if each breath had to push through an invisible barrier of suspicion, prejudice, and tension. The moment James Wilson invited Jasmine Bennett to join them in clarifying the disputed terms, he realized this was more than a business decision. It was a test of all the values he had ever claimed to uphold. Wilson's gaze flicked involuntarily from Jasmine to his team of interpreters, Paul Evans and Martin Harris, two middle-aged white men he had long trusted as his safe go-to experts. They'd once been celebrated in diplomatic circles and lauded by major partners. Yet here they were, failing to handle the specialized terminology and causing the very misunderstanding that nearly derailed the $5 billion deal. In his mind, he still heard Jasmine's confident words echoing. But alongside them, he heard the fierce voice of his own buried prejudices, biases he realized he had never truly confronted. At that moment, Sheikh Khalid lifted his hand, breaking the hush that had settled over the room. His eyes, steady and resolute, locked on Jasmine, and his commanding voice rang out clearly. "Mr. Wilson, I would like Miss Bennett to take a seat at the negotiation table with us. I trust she has the skill and understanding to help us resolve these misunderstandings. That is the best way to proceed with today's meeting." The Sheikh's unexpected proposal stunned everyone. Paul and Martin exchanged panicked looks. Richard Turner reacted instantly, his tone sharp with barely concealed anger. "Your Highness, I respect your opinion, but I must object. This is no time to gamble by bringing an unvetted server into a $5 billion negotiation. Doing so turns this crucial meeting into a farce." Sheikh Khalid met Turner's outburst with a cold, stern gaze. "Mr. Turner, I have made my position clear. My confidence in Miss Bennet is based solely on the expertise she has demonstrated, not on her background or current role. If you disagree, that is your prerogative, but let me reiterate. This is my condition for continuing these negotiations." The Sheikh's firm words struck at Turner's pride. His face flushed with anger and shame. He turned to Wilson, his voice laced with disappointment. "James, are you really going to trust her? An obscure black server, never tested or certified? You want to risk our entire company on someone who merely spotted a minor translation slip?" Wilson remained silent. He drew a deep breath and studied Jasmine, striving to read the calm determination in her eyes despite the storm around her. She stood proud and composed amid those prejudiced, doubting glances, never flinching, never yielding to Turner's crude attacks. In that charged moment, Wilson recalled the principle he'd built Pinnacle investments on: fairness and respect for true merit, regardless of color or origin. Yet he'd never been truly tested on that belief until now. Finally, Wilson straightened, looking Turner in the eye. His voice was steady but firm. "Richard, the professional interpreters we hired made the critical mistake that almost cost us this deal. I cannot continue to entrust our success to a team that has proven its shortcomings. I want to give Miss Bennet a fair chance to demonstrate her capabilities." Turner froze, his fists clenching tremulously as he fought to suppress rising rage. "You're making a huge mistake, James. You'll regret this decision." Wilson did not respond to the threat. Instead, he turned to Jasmine and spoke with symbolic warmth. "Miss Bennet, please join us at the table. I hope your presence will help us resolve the remaining issues." Jasmine nodded softly, then calmly stepped forward and took a seat between Wilson and Sheikh Khalid. Her eyes remained serene, though her heart pounded. She knew this was the most pivotal moment of her career. Turner stood unmoving, fury and resentment blazing in his eyes over being sidelined. He realized that his power and prestige at Pinnacle were now on shaky ground, all because of someone he had never respected. An ordinary server, a black woman who had suddenly become the focus of this historic negotiation. As Jasmine settled into her chair, she felt the Sheikh's trusting gaze, Wilson's expectant look, and Turner's burning hostility. She understood that her greatest challenge lay not in jargon or finance, but in breaking down the invisible wall of prejudice Turner and others had built over decades. And she knew her fight had only just begun. The moment Jasmine settled into the plush leather chair at the conference table, a heavy, meaningful silence fell over the Westwood Hotel's presidential suite. This was more than just a change of seats. It marked a decisive turning point, a shift in power and prejudice laid bare for all to see. Jasmine felt every eye on her, Sheikh Khalid's trusting gaze, Wilson's cautious but hopeful look, and above all, Richard Turner's icy, challenging stare. Turner remained rigid beside the table, his eyes narrowing into slits of resentment. Clearly, he could not accept that Jasmine had claimed a seat meant for Pinnacle's white professional interpreters. Suppressing his anger, he vowed to find any flaw in her expertise. Just one small mistake would be enough to cast her back into the shadows of invisibility. Sheikh Khalid gently reopened the discussion with a deep, technical question in Arabic, his eyes fixed on Jasmine as though testing her true ability. Ms. Bennett, could you explain Section 6.2 regarding the performance, evaluation mechanism, and the additional equity contributions required if the project fails to meet its agreed upon targets? The room fell into tense silence. Jasmine caught Turner's scornful glance. He was clearly waiting for her to falter so he could pounce. But Jasmine remained composed. She nodded, then answered Sheikh Khalid in flawless, perfectly enunciated Arabic. Your Highness, Section 6.2 stipulates that if the project's performance falls short of the agreed milestones, Pinnacle must make additional equity contributions at the rate specified in the contract. However, the current confusion stems from mistranslating additional equity in a way that suggested Pinnacle could unilaterally increase its stake to seize project control. In reality, the original English contract requires both parties' consent for any additional capital, and control remains equally shared. Jasmine's clear, precise explanation drew a satisfied nod from Sheikh Khalid. His expression softened, as if his deepest doubts had finally been dispelled. But Turner refused to accept defeat so easily. He interrupted sharply, his tone openly challenging. Miss Bennett, that sounds convincing, but are you absolutely certain your understanding of these Arabic financial terms is correct? I think we'd best verify before moving on. Unfazed, Jasmine switched to clear, confident English, loud enough for everyone to hear. Mr. Turner, I am completely certain of my interpretation. It's not just linguistic fluency. It's grounded in my hands, on experience at the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, where I helped structure similar financial models. Turner ground his teeth, anger and bitterness flashing in his eyes. Unable to stand her calm confidence, especially coming from a black woman he'd long dismissed, he lobbed another fiendish question, deliberately using even more complex jargon to trap her. Very well. Then can you explain the risk allocation waterfall structure under Section 9.4 of the contract? I'm sure you're familiar with it, right? Wilson frowned, clearly displeased by Turner's relentless provocation, but he remained silent, watching. Jasmine nodded and met Turner's gaze calmly before delivering a detailed response. Mr. Turner, the waterfall structure you mention is a widely used method for allocating cash flows and risks in large-scale investments. Specifically, Section 9.4 provides that project cash flow is prioritized as follows. First, repay bank loans. Next, return equity contributions to both parties, and only then distribute any remaining profits according to the original equity percentages. The current misunderstanding arose because, in Arabic, the term lost its critical technical nuance, leading His Highness to believe Pinnacle had priority in recouping capital and gains. Turner's face paled, and for the first time he visibly lost his composure. The black woman he had scorned had effortlessly answered every one of his toughest questions, and even uncovered another major error he'd never anticipated. Wilson, who'd sat quietly through the exchange, now looked at Jasmine with genuine admiration, mixed with chagrin. He realized she wasn't just on par with his six-figure experts, she had outshone them. The truth left him astonished and ashamed of his own snap judgments based on appearance and status. Jasmine sensed the shift in Wilson's eyes and knew it was a sign that her fight against bias was beginning to bear fruit. Yet she remained vigilant. Turner's hostile glare reminded her that the real challenge lay ahead. Once more, the room was engulfed in profound silence, but this time it was filled with respect and awe, as everyone began to see Jasmine Bennett not as an invisible server, but as the outstanding financial expert she truly was. When the meeting paused for a brief coffee break, Jasmine rose quietly to her feet, keenly aware of the eyes in the room still focused on her. For the first time in those long, grueling 3 days, she no longer felt invisible. Yet, in that moment of recognition, Jasmine felt more acutely than ever the sacrifices and hardships she'd endured to get here. Stepping out of the presidential conference room, she walked down the hall toward the small coffee prep room at its far end. She needed a moment of solitude to steady the whirlwind of emotions crashing through her. As the door swung shut behind her, she closed her eyes and inhaled deeply, only to find painful memories flooding back, beyond her control. A soft, caring voice broke through her reverie. "Jasmine, are you okay?" She opened her eyes to see Emily, her young, white colleague with gentle blue eyes, who'd been the only person to show her kindness from the very day Jasmine had arrived at the Westwood Hotel. Emily stood there holding a steaming cup of coffee, her expression brimming with genuine concern. "I'm all right," Jasmine replied with a small smile, though a shadow of sorrow lingered in her eyes. Emily stepped closer and lowered her voice, as if sharing a secret between them. "I overheard people talking out in the hall. They're really impressed with you, Jasmine. But why would someone as capable as you stay in this job so long?" Jasmine met Emily's clear, earnest gaze. Part of her wanted to dodge the question, but then she realized she needed to share her burden, those invisible weights she'd carried for so long. She drew in another steadying breath, her voice soft yet heavy with worry. "The truth is, it wasn't my choice, Emily. My father was a construction engineer who worked his whole life to give me a good education. But the 2008 financial crisis took everything from us: his job, our home, and finally his health. Back then, I was working at the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority when he suddenly died of a stroke. I had to rush back to the States to care for my ill mother and support my little sister, who was still in school. I had no choice but to take this coffee, server position at the Westwood Hotel, so I could earn enough money and still have time to finish my PhD at Columbia." Emily fell silent, tears welling in her eyes. Jasmine paused a moment, her voice trembling as she continued the more painful part of her story. "But what wounded me most wasn't having to do this simple job. It was the racism in American finance, Emily. For months, I sent out hundreds of applications to banks, investment firms, and big financial companies. They always praised my credentials, and then politely declined with a line like, 'Unfortunately, we don't have a suitable position at this time.' I knew what they really meant. I was a black woman, and in their eyes, I'd never be worthy of those power rooms." Emily gasped, tears now streaming freely down her cheeks. Her voice shook with emotion. "I had no idea. You've suffered so much. Jasmine, I'm so sorry I never truly understood what you went through." Gently, Jasmine took Emily's hand and offered a kind smile. "Don't cry, Emily. This isn't your fault. But I want you to know that the battle I'm fighting today, in that room full of powerful people, is the same fight millions like me wage every single day. It's not just my story. It's a struggle against a society that judges people by their skin color and background instead of their true abilities." Wiping away her tears, Emily's expression shifted from sympathy to fierce resolve. "Jasmine, you're not alone anymore. I may not be able to change the whole world overnight, but I'll do everything I can to support you. I'll stand by your side in the days ahead, no matter what happens." Looking into Emily's determined eyes, Jasmine felt a warmth, a solidarity and trust she hadn't known in years. It gave her newfound strength, knowing she was no longer fighting only for herself, but for all those marginalized by prejudice and discrimination. "Thank you, Emily. You have no idea what this means to me," Jasmine said softly, gratitude shining in her eyes. The two women stood together in that small room, sharing a quiet moment that would change both their lives forever. Jasmine knew the greatest challenges still lay ahead, but now she would face them knowing she was not alone. When Jasmine and Emily returned to the Westwood Hotel's presidential suite, Jasmine immediately sensed how different everyone's expressions were now. Some regarded her with discreet admiration, others still wore cautious, wary looks, and most striking of all was Richard Turner's gaze, cold, cutting, brimming with resentment. Jasmine knew the hardest battle lay ahead, and that Turner wouldn't give up easily. As everyone settled into their seats, Sheikh Khalid calmly restarted the meeting with his usual composed courtesy. Yet Jasmine felt the tension still hanging heavy in the air. She wondered if she had the strength to face the challenges to come. Across the table, Turner discreetly pulled his phone from his suit pocket, planning to slip into the hallway once the meeting began. His hands trembled with stress and anger as he quickly dialed the admissions office at New York University, where Jasmine claimed to have earned her master's degree. He spoke quietly as someone answered. "I'm Richard Turner, EVP at Pinnacle Investments. I need to verify one Jasmine Bennett. There's reason to doubt her credentials." Just minutes later, Turner nearly dropped the phone in disbelief when the NYU admissions officer replied, "Mr. Turner, we've checked our records and can confirm that Jasmine Bennett graduated with a master's in international finance from New York University, with top honors. She also received a special distinction scholarship at commencement." Turner's face drained of color, his knuckles whitening on the handset. Fury and humiliation surged through him. He couldn't accept that the woman he'd openly dismissed was truly more accomplished than he'd imagined. But rather than concede, Turner plotted a bolder move. He would publicly embarrass Jasmine in front of Sheikh Khalid and everyone else. He returned to the boardroom just as Sheikh Khalid wrapped up a detailed overview of the remaining contested contract points. No sooner had the sheikh paused than Turner sprang to his feet, voice hard and challenging. "Forgive the interruption, but I must clarify something important. Ms. Bennett, I've just verified your background, and I'm frankly surprised you hold the degree you claim." The room fell into stunned silence. Sheikh Khalid frowned at Turner's aggressive tone. Wilson shot Turner a sharp look of disapproval. Turner continued, venom dripping from his words. "Having a degree doesn't necessarily prove real world competence. To protect everyone's interests, I believe you should demonstrate your expertise right here, right now." His mocking, denigrating challenge carried the weight of prejudice crashing down on Jasmine. Yet this time she did not falter. She rose slowly, met Turner's eyes, and spoke with unwavering confidence. "Mr. Turner, I welcome any question you have about my abilities. Please, feel free to ask." Turner's lips curled into a cold smile as he posed the most complex question he could summon, intending to trap her in front of Sheikh Khalid and all present. "Very well, Miss Bennett. Explain precisely the equity kicker financial structure in an international real estate contract and its specific application in Section 11.8 that we're discussing." Several Pinnacle team members exchanged anxious glances. Equity kicker is a highly specialized concept that challenges even top experts. Turner's self-satisfied smile betrayed his confidence that Jasmine would stumble. But Jasmine did not waver. She launched into a clear, step-by-step explanation with astonishing fluency and accuracy. The equity kicker is a mechanism that allows the lender or investor to receive additional returns, beyond the standard interest rate, if the project achieves exceptional profitability. In our contract, Section 11.8 stipulates that should the project exceed its initial profit targets, Both Pinnacle and the Abu Dhabi Investment Fund will share the surplus profits in proportion to their original equity stakes. This provision safeguards both parties' interests while incentivizing maximum performance. The room seemed to hold its breath at Jasmine's flawless delivery. Turner was left speechless, his face flushing from red to chalky white as bitterness and defeat washed over him. Just as he opened his mouth to object again, Sheikh Khalid cut him off with a cold, disappointed rebuke. "Mr. Turner, throughout this meeting, I have witnessed your disrespect and prejudice toward Miss Bennet. I have remained silent long enough, but now I must say that your discriminatory attitude deeply disappoints me." An awkward, tense silence fell. Turner stood frozen, hands shaking, humiliated in front of everyone. Wilson turned to look at him with clear disapproval. Sheikh Khalid continued sternly, "If these negotiations fail, I want you to know, Mr. Turner, that your prejudice and unprofessionalism will be among the chief reasons why." Jasmine stood there, deeply moved. This was the first time someone in Sheikh Khalid's position had defended her against Turner's ingrained bias. Yet she also understood that her battle was far from over. Turner's bitter hurt would only make him more dangerous and determined than ever. When Sheikh Khalid's stern rebuke ended, the Westwood Hotel's presidential suite fell into an oppressive silence. James Wilson sat unmoving, staring at Richard Turner's stunned, shame-faced expression, feeling as if he'd just awoken from a long dream in which he had lost sight of his own values. Wilson had never felt so uneasy. For years, he'd proudly built Pinnacle Investments into a top firm, always proclaiming fairness and cultural diversity as its core values. But today, in this very room, he confronted a bitter truth. He, too, was part of the culture of bias and discrimination he'd publicly decried. His gaze drifted involuntarily to Jasmine, sitting tall, calm, and proud. A woman he barely noticed hours ago had just demonstrated exceptional skill and extraordinary courage in the face of contempt from his own company. Wilson realized this was far bigger than the $5 billion real estate deal. It was about transforming his own mindset, and that of the entire firm, to dismantle the unconscious prejudices he had nurtured for so long. When the meeting paused for a short break, Wilson approached Jasmine. "Miss Bennet," he said quietly, his tone more sincere than ever, "may I speak with you privately for a moment?" Jasmine looked surprised, but nodded gently and followed him into the quiet hallway. Once they were alone, Wilson took a deep breath, his eyes stripped of their usual confidence and authority, replaced by genuine remorse. "Jasmine," he began softly, "I want to apologize, not just on behalf of the company but personally. Over the past few days, I overlooked your true abilities because I couldn't rise above my own unconscious biases." Jasmine met his earnest gaze and replied calmly, "Mr. Wilson, I accept your apology, but what I'm really looking for isn't an apology. What I, and many others like me, truly deserve is respect and fair recognition." Wilson fell silent, her words ringing in his mind like a wake-up call. He saw that she spoke not only for herself, but for countless talented individuals buried under prejudice. Finally, he nodded, resolve in his voice. "You're absolutely right, Jasmine. I must change this. Starting today, I will do everything necessary to correct my mistakes and those of this company." He paused, determination shining in his eyes like never before. "And the first thing I'll do is publicly announce to the entire firm and our partners that you're now Pinnacle's senior financial advisor on this $5 billion transaction." Jasmine was momentarily stunned, her heart swelling with emotion at a turn she hadn't dared imagine hours earlier. She quickly composed herself and offered a grateful smile. Thank you, Mr. Wilson, but please understand, this isn't a favor or special privilege. It's a role I'll embrace with full responsibility and expertise to prove that a person's value doesn't depend on skin color or background." For the first time, Wilson's eyes shone with genuine admiration. He saw in Jasmine the embodiment of courage and dignity, qualities he'd believed he possessed but never fully realized. He nodded, his tone warm and earnest. "I understand completely, Jasmine. This is exactly what Pinnacle needs right now. A person like you, who can guide us to become a truly fair and progressive company." They stood together in the hallway, the silence between them filled with profound understanding that transcended words. When they returned to the boardroom, Wilson spoke up at once, his voice clear and decisive. "Before we proceed, I have an important announcement. In light of today's events, I am appointing Ms. Jasmine Bennett as Pinnacle's official senior financial advisor for this transaction. From now on, she will have independent authority to advise and decide on all technical matters." The room buzzed with surprised murmurs. A few people smiled and offered polite applause to congratulate Jasmine. But Jasmine noticed Turner's face paling, his anger and sense of powerlessness more evident than ever. She knew that, although she'd won a significant victory, Turner would not give up easily. What mattered most to her in that moment was that Wilson had truly begun the journey of making amends and establishing real fairness. Jasmine understood that many battles still lay ahead, but at least now she would not fight alone in her pursuit of respect and equality. The moment Wilson's surprise announcement landed, the Westwood Hotel's presidential suite snapped out of its stunned silence and zeroed in on the final details of the contract. But Jasmine knew that this victory was only the opening move. The real battle still lay ahead. Sheikh Khalid, ever polished yet razor, sharp, peeled back a few fresh pages from the dossier before him. His gaze swept slowly across the negotiation table, pausing longest on Jasmine. "I'm very pleased Miss Bennett has joined your official advisory team," he said. "However, before we finalize, we need to nail down a few additional key provisions." Instant tension crackled through the room. Wilson's brow furrowed. He knew exactly how much weight those words carried. Turner, tucked into a corner, practically held his breath, silently betting on Jasmine's next misstep to restore his own tarnished pride. Setting the sheet down with deliberate calm, Sheikh Khalid continued in measured tones that cut through the air. "We require a special protective clause for the Abu Dhabi Investment Fund. This will guarantee our veto power over critical financial decisions, shielding us from any volatility in U.S. markets. I realize this complicates matters, but it is a non-negotiable condition." Wilson's shoulders tensed visibly. Agreeing would cede much of Pinnacle's proactive control. Refusing would shatter the $5 billion deal at the 11th hour. An oppressive hush fell. Wilson turned to Jasmine with pleading eyes. She was the only one he trusted to break the deadlock. Drawing on every ounce of confidence she'd built, Jasmine spoke with calm authority. "Your Highness, I fully understand your concern, but I believe we can craft a more creative solution, one that safeguards both sides' interests while bridging Gulf financial culture with U.S. investment norms." A flicker of curiosity crossed Sheikh Khalid's face. "Ms. Bennett, please outline your proposal." Jasmine rose and moved to the whiteboard. With precise, flowing strokes, she sketched a detailed financial schematic. "Rather than an absolute veto, let's adopt a conditional veto mechanism. Under this, Abu Dhabi's veto would only trigger in specific scenarios. For example, if projected returns dip below our agreed safety threshold. To ensure transparency, we'd form a joint oversight committee with balanced voting rights from both Pinnacle and Abu Dhabi. Any veto decision would require at least one affirmative vote from Pinnacle's representatives. This preserves each side's essential controls while maintaining clear, accountable governance. Absolute silence followed Jasmine's presentation as everyone absorbed her solution. Wilson studied the board, visibly impressed. He'd never imagined a fix that was both so elegant and culturally attuned. Turner's face drained of color. Once again, Jasmine had outshone his every expectation, neutralizing his final attack. At last, Sheikh Khalid broke into slow applause, genuine admiration in his eyes. "Remarkable, Miss Bennett. I have met many international finance experts, but few can devise such a nuanced, precise solution so swiftly. This proposal satisfies our requirements and preserves the spirit of equal partnership." He turned to Wilson with determination. "I will sign this contract today on one last condition." Wilson leaned forward. "What is that, Your Highness?" Sheikh Khalid's gaze locked onto Jasmine. "Ms. Jasmine Bennett must be the project's lead advisor. I need assurance that every subsequent decision will involve her active hands on participation. Only then can I confidently sign." The room collectively held its breath at this declaration. Turner seemed ready to collapse. He recognized that Jasmine had just officially eclipsed him in authority, endorsed by a major international partner. Wilson rose, voice strong and unwavering. "Your Highness, I wholeheartedly agree. Pinnacle Investments commits that Ms. Jasmine Bennett will serve as senior lead advisor on this project, with full authority and support." Sheikh Khalid nodded in satisfaction, offering Jasmine a warm, approving look. "Then we have full agreement. I hope this venture not only succeeds financially but stands as a testament to overcoming prejudice and affirming true merit." As Wilson extended his hand to seal the deal, a ripple of quiet applause filled the room, soft but deeply meaningful. Jasmine stood proud, bathed in the glow of a triumph unlike any she'd known. Yet, even as the contract was signed, Jasmine felt the fight against bias was far from over. She caught Turner's lingering glare, angry, hostile, far from extinguished, and knew that her quest for genuine respect and equality was only just beginning. The moment the applause in the Westwood Hotel's presidential suite died down, Jasmine could see it clearly. Everyone's eyes had truly changed. There was no more doubt, derision, or hesitation. Now they looked at her with genuine respect and admiration. Wilson shook Sheikh Khalid's hand firmly, relief and pride flooding through him. After all the obstacles and tension, the $5 billion real estate deal was finally sealed, and this success meant more than money. It shattered the company's long-hidden biases. Addressing the entire negotiation team, Wilson turned to Jasmine, his voice full of pride and sincerity. "Allow me to officially thank you, Ms. Jasmine Bennett. Without your excellence, your courage, and your insight, I don't believe we would have reached today's success." The room erupted in even louder applause. Jasmine felt her throat tighten with emotion, but she forced herself to remain composed and offered a modest nod and a gentle smile. In the corner, Turner stood motionless, his face pale and his eyes burning with envy and anger. He knew his position at Pinnacle was now seriously threatened, and the woman he'd once dismissed had far surpassed him, both in title and in the respect she commanded. Sheikh Khalid approached Jasmine, his gaze warm and clearly impressed. "Miss Bennett, I'm truly impressed by what you've demonstrated throughout these negotiations. I never imagined someone here in the U.S. could be so deeply versed in Gulf financial culture and structures." He paused, smiled kindly, then continued in a more serious tone. I'm planning to open a representative office for the Abu Dhabi Investment Fund in the United States, and I would like to invite you to serve as its senior manager. With your abilities and understanding, I believe you'll be an outstanding leader, helping us expand our international cooperation most effectively." A stunned silence fell over the room. This was no ordinary job offer. It was a powerful, prestigious leadership role any international finance expert would dream of. Wilson stepped forward, briefly looking flustered before regaining his composure. He realized that if Jasmine left, Pinnacle would lose not only a rare talent, but also the living symbol of the cultural change he was striving to build. He took a deep breath and spoke gently but decisively. "Your Highness, I'm delighted Miss Bennet is held in such high regard by you. I'd like to make a similar offer right here." Turning to Jasmine, his eyes earnest and serious, he said, "Jasmine, I formally offer you a senior leadership position at Pinnacle, overseeing our entire Strategic International Projects division. We will ensure you receive a special compensation package, with salary and benefits commensurate with your talents." Jasmine froze for a moment, overwhelmed by two monumental offers delivered almost simultaneously. Just days ago, she had been an almost invisible server in this room, and now she stood on the brink of the greatest opportunity of her life. Turner looked like stone in the corner, his face drained of color, hands trembling with fury and despair. He understood that Jasmine's resounding victory today was his own humiliating defeat, and there was nothing he could do to change it. Meanwhile, Sheikh Khalid regarded Jasmine with a friendly smile and gentle words. "I know this is a big decision for you, Miss Bennet, but whatever you choose, I have every confidence you will achieve even greater success." Wilson nodded in agreement. "I fully support that. Whether you stay with Pinnacle or join His Highness's team, you will have our full backing." The room fell silent once more, all eyes fixed on Jasmine, waiting for her decision. She inhaled deeply and spoke calmly, yet proudly. "I'm deeply grateful for the trust and incredible opportunities you've both offered. This is more than a turning point in my career. It's a testament that a person's ability is not determined by race or background. I will take the time to consider carefully before making my final decision. But regardless of what I choose, I promise to give everything I have to live up to this trust." The room burst into enthusiastic applause, a heartfelt show of agreement and respect for Jasmine. She stood there prouder and more confident than ever, knowing she had achieved a dual victory. Not only a spectacular triumph in the $5 billion deal, but also a profound win in the fight against prejudice and in affirming her own worth. Yet, as the applause faded, Jasmine caught Turner's vicious glare still fixed on her. She knew that, although today was a landmark victory, the struggle against people like Turner was far from over. Her greatest comfort, however, was knowing she was no longer alone on this journey. That morning, the entire Pinnacle Investments team gathered in the large auditorium at headquarters. The soft murmur quieted as James Wilson stepped up to the podium, his face solemn and his eyes filled with a sincerity his staff hadn't seen in a long time. He scanned the expansive room, lingering for a moment on Jasmine, who sat in the front row with perfect posture, her gaze bright yet humble. He drew a deep breath, summoning the courage to speak the words he knew he had to say. "Dear colleagues of Pinnacle, today I'm not here to celebrate our recent $5 billion deal, though we have every reason to be proud. I'm here to address something far more important, something that has weighed heavily on me over these past days." A profound silence fell as every eye fixed on their powerful CEO. Wilson paused briefly, then continued with genuine humility. "I must admit that both I and Pinnacle Investments as a whole have harbored deep, unconscious biases. In this deal, it was Jasmine Bennett, someone we initially overlooked and underestimated because of her race and job title, who awakened me to this truth. I have come to realize that although we've long proclaimed equality and diversity as our core values, we've never truly confronted or dismantled the invisible barriers we ourselves created. He looked directly at Jasmine, his voice growing firmer. I want to publicly apologize to you, Jasmine Bennett, and to any employee at Pinnacle who has suffered injustice due to racial or background-based bias. I promise each of you that, starting today, our company culture will genuinely change. From now on, everyone here will be evaluated solely on ability, contribution, and real merit, regardless of skin color or upbringing. As he finished, the auditorium erupted in enthusiastic applause, a clear sign that his heartfelt message had resonated. At the back, Richard Turner stood in stunned silence, his face ashen, eyes cast downward in shame and powerlessness. He realized that the era of prejudice he had represented was truly ending at Pinnacle. Wilson turned to Jasmine and signaled for her to join him at the podium. Jasmine rose, walking confidently through the applause. Standing before the microphone, she swept her gaze across the audience, feeling a profound sense of responsibility fill her heart. She knew her words would carry weight far beyond herself. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice calm and gentle yet strong. "I am truly honored to stand here today, but I'm not here to talk about myself. I'm here to speak about something much bigger." The room hushed completely, all eyes fixed on her. Jasmine inhaled deeply and went on. "For years, I lived in the shadows of bias and discrimination. I know the bitter feeling of seeing my efforts, skills, and qualifications go unrecognized simply because of my skin color and background. But I also know I'm not alone. Countless people still endure the same every day." She paused, her eyes growing softer yet more resolute. "In recent days at Pinnacle, I've learned that the greatest power to overcome prejudice isn't hate or resentment, but steadfast perseverance, courage, and the ability to prove one's true worth. Each of us has intrinsic value, and that value should never be defined by race, gender, or origin." Her heartfelt words moved many listeners to tears, and even those who usually remained impassive stood silently, their expressions reflective. Jasmine's voice grew stronger than ever. "Today, I stand here, on behalf of everyone who has ever been cast aside, to say we deserve fair treatment and respect. I also bring a hopeful message. Real change is possible if we have the courage to confront and dismantle the biases that persist. Let Pinnacle be a place where each person's ability and dignity are truly recognized and honored." As Jasmine finished, the auditorium exploded in heartfelt applause. Wilson stepped up beside her, his tone warm and resolute. "I pledge to you all that Pinnacle Investments will do everything necessary to ensure every employee has equal opportunity, without regard to race, gender, or background. And from this day forward, Jasmine Bennett will be the living symbol of that change." The entire room rose to its feet in a standing ovation. Jasmine looked around, her heart swelling with emotion. In the corner, Turner quietly slipped away, carrying his final, bitter defeat. But Jasmine understood that this moment wasn't just her personal triumph. It was a victory for everyone who has ever been discriminated against, a clear sign that change is truly possible, as long as each of us has the courage to stand up and speak out for our real worth. 6 months later, on a bright spring morning, the sprawling plot of land in the heart of Manhattan came alive like never before. A grand stage had been erected, and thousands of guests, members of the press, and international investors had gathered in eager anticipation. The air buzzed with excitement as everyone waited for the groundbreaking ceremony of the $5 billion joint venture between Pinnacle Investments and the Abu Dhabi Investment Fund. At the center of attention stood Dr. Jasmine Bennett. Dressed in a sharp navy suit and flanked by James Wilson and Sheikh Khalid on the dais, she exuded confidence and radiance, so different from the coffee server once overlooked in the Westwood Hotel boardroom. When Wilson stepped up to the microphone, his voice echoed throughout the venue. "Ladies and gentlemen, today is a very special day. Not only are we launching the largest real estate project in our company's history, but more importantly, this marks a new era. An era of transformation, equality, and justice. And the clearest symbol of that era stands right here beside me. Dr. Jasmine Bennett." Thunderous applause erupted, many rising to their feet, eyes shining with admiration for Jasmine. Sheikh Khalid offered a warm smile and polite applause, his expression reflecting both pride and satisfaction at the woman who had overcome every prejudice to become such an exceptional leader. The ceremony was a resounding success. As Jasmine stepped down from the stage, she received countless congratulations and hearty handshakes from international investors. Yet, even in that triumphant moment, her gaze caught sight of Richard Turner standing alone in the distance. No longer holding any power at Pinnacle, his face was heavy with disappointment and bitterness. Jasmine let out a quiet sigh. This was not a personal victory, but a profound lesson for anyone still harboring outdated biases. After the event, Jasmine walked into her new office on the top floor of the project headquarters. The modern, airy space featured floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lively Manhattan skyline. As she sat at her desk, she noticed a small, intricately carved wooden box resting on the surface, its lid decorated with elegant Arabic motifs. She opened the box to find a beautifully crafted gold pen and a handwritten note from Sheikh Khalid. Lifting the note, she read the heartfelt message in English. "Judge a person by their inner worth, not by outward appearance. With deep respect and admiration for Dr. Jasmine Bennett, who has taught us all an important lesson." Moved, Jasmine gently placed the pen back in its box. Leaning back in her chair, she gazed thoughtfully out the window. In that quiet moment, she reflected on her journey, from the bitter days of repeated rejections based on her skin color, to serving coffee to support her family, and finally to earning the recognition and respect she deserved today. But Jasmine also knew that today's success was bigger than her alone. It was a beacon of hope, a powerful reminder to everyone facing injustice and discrimination. You can break through barriers and bias if you believe in your true worth. And in the stillness of that room, Jasmine felt the weight of an even greater responsibility. She would continue to fight and inspire, not just within Pinnacle or through this $5 billion project, but on far broader stages, so that everyone could see the value of true equality, genuine fairness, and the limitless potential within each person. She closed her eyes for a moment, inhaling deeply, feeling a surge of inner peace and strength. When she opened them again, there was no trace of doubt, only unwavering conviction in the path ahead and in the positive change she could bring. Somewhere out there, countless people like her were waiting for their chance to be seen and respected for who they truly are. From this moment on, Jasmine knew her mission, to pave a new way forward, guiding others out of the shadows of prejudice and into the light they deserve. Jasmine rose and walked to the expansive window, her face alight with confidence and hope, as she looked toward the future that stretched out before her. She smiled, understanding that today was not just her new beginning, but the starting point for far-reaching, transformative change she believed would ripple through the world, creating a fairer place for us all. What do you think of Dr. Jasmine Bennett's inspiring journey? Have you ever witnessed or experienced a situation like hers in your work or life? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to hit like, share this story with friends and family to spread the message of fairness and equality, and subscribe so you won't miss our next meaningful stories. Thank you for listening and joining us on this journey. See you in the next video.